Welcome to Kansas Ag Report. I'm Ken Rogers. On this week's program, we talk about Nicodemus in north central Kansas and what is going on in that community, as well as their involvement in reinvigorating the Kansas Black Farmers Association. We'll talk with Angela Bates, the Executive Director of the Nicodemus Historical Society. We'll also have features from the Kansas Soybean Commission, Kansas Grain Sorghum, as well as the Kansas Department of Agriculture and the weekly update from the Kansas Livestock Association and market information from Pinion.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers. Kansas Farm Bureau, a grassroots ag organization representing the state's farm and ranch families since 1919, kfb.org. And the Kansas Wheat Commission, lending in the adoption of profitable innovations from wheat, online at kswheat.com.
Well, the Kansas corn growers elected 3 new board members at their 2023 annual meeting in Salina last week. The corn grower heard some policy updaters, reviewed and also had some resolutions. They also held board elections for those 3 districts in the northern districts. Retiring Kansas corn leaders recognized later on the day. Jeff Albers from Denton, elected to be representing the Northeast District. He fills a position held by Ken McCauley from White Cloud, who retired from the board. Brett Garholtz from Republic, elected to represent the North Central District. He fills in a position held by Tom Tibbetts of Minneapolis, who retired. And Brett Rogers, reelected to his position as he is from the Hoxie area. And McCauley was the 06-07 National Corn Grower President. He represented corn growers from 2015 to 2013 on the KCGA board. Also, Terry Venduska was recognized on his retirement from the Kansas Corn Commission, serving since 1994. He was also chair of the U.S. Grains Council in 2011 and continues to be involved in that group to build trade. The corn growers held a reorganization following their annual meeting, and here's their new officer team. Brett Rogers of Hoxie continues to be president. J.D. Hanna of Silver Lake is vice president. Chad Epler from Columbus is secretary. Kent Moore from Iuka is treasurer. Well, the deadline to respond for the 2022 Census of Agriculture next week, USDA's National Ag Statistics Service says farmers and ranchers need to respond by February 6th. Online or through the mail. Last month, they mailed the questionnaire of the census to every known ag producer in the U.S. and Puerto Rico. Conducting just once every 5 years, the Ag Census provides a complete account for the nation's farms and ranches and the people who operate them, and responding to the census required by federal law. And also, they publish data in aggregate form to prevent any disclosing of certain identities of any individual producer or operation. Again, you can respond online if you haven't yet to agcounts.usda.gov. And data being published by USDA's Economic Research Service shows rotational grazing adaptation. They vary by region. Rotational grazing is a management practice in which livestock are cycled through multiple fenced grazing areas to manage for forest production, forage quality, animal health, and environmental quality. In a recent study, USDA researchers found the highest rate of total rotational grazing adoption, 49% of operations. Well, that took place in the Northern Plains and the Western Corn Belt. Stay with us. We'll have more coming up in a moment.
The Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by Kansas Grain Sorghum, growers working together. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org. Grass and Grain, online or in the mail, keeping Kansas farmers informed for over 60 years. grassandgrain.com.
Imagine turning soybean oil, used cooking oils, and waste animal fats into fuel so amazing it drives U.S. jobs and our economy forward. Learn more about biodiesel at americasadvancedbiofuel.com.
And our guest is Angela Bates, who is the Executive Director of the Nicodemus Historical Society. If you don't know the role that Nicodemus has played in state history, hopefully you can learn in about the next 6 minutes. So, Angela, good friend, thanks for being here. we caught up with you in Topeka to talk about trails and other things, and that trail is something that's very important to the history of Kansas,
Yes.
and that's the Ellis Trail out in
Yes.
central Kansas.
Yes, yes. It's all about the migration of the African American into the state of Kansas, but in particular, the group of people that came in 1877 from Lexington and Georgetown, Kentucky, and parts of Tennessee that migrated out and decided to make northwestern Kansas their home. They got off the train in Ellis, and then they had a 35-mile walk over to Nicodemus. Uncharted land. W.R. Hill, who was an agent for the railroads and was also one of the founding fathers, he and one of the ministers had compass and remembered the landmarks and brought that first group over in September of 1877. So it's a history of the migration of the African American out of the South into the western frontier and into, in particular, Kansas. And of course, you know, the 1879, 1880 was when there was the mass exodus. So 2 years prior to that, it was the settlement of the folks settling at Nicodemus. So the history is quite imperative to understanding the history and the role of Kansas in the bigger national context of civil wars over, reconstructions over. People are beginning to migrate out of the South. Kansas becomes this promised land, and it becomes the answer to home ownership with the African Americans. They can come and they can homestead and they could create their own all-black towns and govern themselves.
And that's maybe one of the things that gets lost in all the different histories and all the things that have been done. And your group has worked for a number of years now to bring this kind of story to life, because one of the things I think Angela's changed is technology. Technology,
Yes.
it's so, I wouldn't say easier, but it's, I think people are more responsive now to
Yes.
learning more because of some of the technologies.
Yes, yes. And even though we have physical signs out on the trail to Nicodemus, there's 6 signs. Those signs will have QR codes. And we are in the process of working with K-State through a National Humanities Grant to actually develop a website for that trail. As well as we're finishing up a documentary on the Ellis Trail. And we shot that in September, and I'm working with Nick Apt, who is the videographer. And so we're just in the process of beginning to edit some of that. And once we get that documentary done, it's going to be fantastic to show the story of these people actually getting off the train and migrating up through the 2 valleys, the Saline Valley, I call it Saline Valley, and then into the Solomon Valley, across the river into Nicodemus. So it's all about, that documentary is about the Ellis Trail. It's about the people that came initially. My great-grandmother was pregnant at the time, and so she had the first baby born in Nicodemus after they arrived. About 3 weeks after they arrived, she had the first baby born in Nicodemus, and the brother to that baby was my grandfather.
Wow.
Yeah, this was a phenomenal story. And we have wagons and descendants of all of these people that migrated, and one family in particular, which is my great-grandmother who carried the first baby. Most of the descendants that are in that documentary are descendants of her.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is. It's a fascinating story. Angela Bates, who is Executive Director of the Nicodemus Historical Society, is joining us. We're going to talk more about the unique role Nicodemus continues to play today. We'll do that in just a moment.
Kansas Ag Report brought to you in part by the Kansas Livestock Association, supporting members' business interests and meeting consumer demands. KLA.org. Oldie Seed Farms, carrying soil-specific seed. Find them on the web at oldieseed.com. That's OHLDE seed.com. And Kansas Corn, building the future at kansascorn.com.
And our guest is Angela Bates, who is Executive Director of the Nicodemus Historical Society. And they were in Topeka to talk about the Ellis Trail. And hopefully we get more attention to that, because it helps tell the story of Kansas and kind of where we've been and where we're going. And Angela, with Nicodemus, still a living community. Folks are still there, being very much. It's so great to be there in the summertime when groups from all over and all the families get together, and some of us get to sneak in and kind of be a part of that.
Yes.
But also a revitalization of the Black Farmers Association happening there in Nicodemus.
Yes. Well, I'll speak a little about that, but the person that's really heading that is Johnella Holmes. She's the head of the Kansas Black Farmers. I was involved in the initial phase of that, the development of that organization. But it's really all about how African Americans participated in the agricultural aspects of the economy for years. And of course, there was denial in a lot of different ways. And we just lost about a year ago one of our more famous farmers, and that was Bernard Bates. And it was because of his efforts that there was the Pigford case, Pigford versus Department of Ag. And right now, my two sisters and I inherited my parents' farm. They retired and moved back in 1980, well, in the early 80s or the late 70s. And they bought a farm that has always been in the families, not in our family in particular, but it's always been in the Nicodemus family. And we have the only remaining historical barn in the Nicodemus Township. So we're hoping to get that restored. But yes, farming was a part of the economy. It was a part of the livelihood of the folks that came and homesteaded. So we're intimately involved with the land.
There's been a lot of also efforts working with K-State.
Yes.
The late Burl Schweitzer, very proud of his hometown of Nicodemus, not only invested but made sure K-State made investments as well.
Yes. And Johnella has a camp every year, I think it's in June, where she's bringing kids, inner city kids or kids that are disadvantaged that get an opportunity to come and learn about farming, learn about K-State, learn about Burl Schweitzer. So it's a Burl Schweitzer educational agricultural camp. I think that's what she calls it.
Yes, very good.
And she's been doing that for over 10 years now. So we're trying to get the next generation involved in knowing that African Americans were participating in agriculture.
Well, Angel, now folks want to learn more about Nicodemus, and it is a national park, and the whole thing about the community. How are some of the best ways to do that?
Well, if you want to get online, you can check out Nicodemus National Historic Site. It is a unit of the National Park Service. You can contact me directly when it relates to the history, the in-depth history. And I'm at the Nicodemus Historical Society, but my number, I don't mind giving it out, is 785-839-8200.
All right, Angela.
Okay.
Thanks for your participation, your continued, probably, I would guess right now, the biggest cheerleader for Nicodemus and keeping things going. So sure appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me.
Angela Bates, who is Executive Director of the Nicodemus Historical Society, has joined us. We'll have more coming up in just a moment.
What if U.S. soybean meal were more than a commodity? If seed companies and the soybean checkoff built a better variety? That future is here. The time is now. To meet end-user demands, the soybean checkoff is investing in the compositional quality of soybeans, including meal. A message from the Kansas Soybean Commission, the Soybean Checkoff, progress powered by Kansas farmers.
The Kansas Soybean Association and Kansas Soybean Commission presented 2 special awards at the luncheon of the Kansas Soybean Expo January 11th. You may recognize the 2023 recipient of the Friend of Soy Award from her appearances on television promoting soy food recipes. Charlene Patton is an icon in the food and nutrition space and is well known for her cooking demonstrations on stations in Topeka, Wichita, and Pittsburgh. Charlene has been the Kansas Soybean Commission's Consumer Media Specialist since 1996, a role which entails modifying everyday recipes to use soy-based ingredients and sharing those recipes with audiences across Kansas. Her expertise in nutrition comes from a lifetime love of baking and knowledge passed down from her mother and grandmother. Charlene, who grew up in Grantville, often credits these women and the 4-H program for laying a foundational knowledge of baking. At Kansas State University, Charlene earned a degree in foods and nutrition and business in 1975. She also met husband Dan, and the two wed in 1977. The couple have 4 daughters, Jana, Krista, Lori, and Megan. WIBW-TV earned the Meritorious Service Award for going above and beyond to continue sharing Charlene's soy food recipes when live recordings in the TV studio became impossible during the pandemic. Morning show hosts Chris Fisher and Jared Broyles set up virtual interviews with Charlene while she demonstrated the recipes from her home kitchen. This solution allowed the long-standing partnership between WIBW and the Kansas Soybean Commission to continue without pause. WIBW-TV has been a valuable media partner in promoting soy food recipes from the Kansas Soybean Commission in the 2+ decades since Charlene took the role of creating the dishes as consumer media specialist. The monthly recipes created by Charlene on behalf of the Kansas Soybean Commission are always available at www.kansassoybeans.org/consumers. This page also outlines her TV appearance schedule and includes links to the station live streams to watch these demonstrations from anywhere.
Sorghum is one of the most important cereal crops worldwide, and Kansas leads the nation in its production. Over the years, sorghum has been either exported, used in animal feed domestically, or for other industrial uses. Recently, its use in the ethanol market has seen tremendous growth, with 30% of domestic sorghum typically going to ethanol production. Kansas Grain Sorghum is committed to sorghum research, market development, and education. Learn more at ksgrainsorghum.org.
I grow food-grade sorghum for all kinds of special uses, mainly for human consumption. So it's very important for me to be as sustainable as I possibly can and have the best grain I possibly can.
When people start talking about sustainability, that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. To us, that means using the least amount of pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides that we can, using fertilizer as needed in the smallest amounts possible to grow the crops we want to grow. The food that we produce and the grain we produce, it goes a long ways and touches a lot of different people. So the better we can do that with the less impact on the environment, it's really better for everyone.
The big thing now is kind of the sustainability aspect of agriculture, but it's not a cookie cutter thing, because what I do, you go 20 miles from here and it's not going to work the same it's going to work here. The soil types are different, topography's different, even the climate's different enough. It's something you've just kind of got to have a general framework, develop and work towards the specifics for your particular operation.
So western Kansas, we sit on top of a large area of water, like a lake, a pool, deep down in the ground. And for generations and years, we've depended on that to water the crops with irrigation or sprinkler systems to make those crops that needed water flourish. However, over time, that has continued to go down. So we're having to think outside the box. How do we work without that water system? Sorghum's root system works really well in that, as well as being able to produce a crop even when we don't have the moisture we desperately need.
We want to leave this farm better than when we got here. It's important to us, and sorghum's a big part of that. It really helps us with winter and water erosion over the winter with the root structure it has, provides a lot of residue, also controls evaporation during the summer, and that the residue is really beneficial for the next crop.
If we couldn't be sustainable, we wouldn't be farmers today. So for us, sustainability is just really second nature. We are going to give the land the best that we can because we want the very best off of it. It's also the sustainability of our livelihood, of generational farming, the ones that have done it for years and know the best way to produce the best crops.
If I were to not have sorghum in my rotation, it would definitely flatten my production, my sustainability. Everything would just be flattened out. And sorghum, as well as it grows in western Kansas, I can't imagine taking it out of my rotation.
Sorghum literally checks all the boxes. If you want to be sustainable, it works there. If you want to grow in a dry climate, it works there. If you want to grow in a not so dry climate, it works there. So it's so versatile, and especially where it can put back in, we're trying to figure out how to cut back on inputs, and sorghum itself inputs into the ground where other crops just take from. For us and our rotation and many others, sorghum is the resource conserving crop.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
At the Kansas Department of Agriculture, we're constantly working to improve our service to the agriculture industry across the state. One of the ways we've been working to make that service to you more efficient and effective is by expanding your access to online renewals. We know that you're busy in your farm operations, agribusinesses, food establishments, and other business efforts, and that paperwork just makes your work more difficult. So KDA programs across all of our divisions have expanded in recent years to allow you to submit your paperwork quickly and accurately through online systems using a variety of industry-supported vendors. From livestock brands to food establishment licenses, we now make nearly all of our license renewals available to you online, so you can submit them faster and we can process them faster with secure payments. Online systems result in higher accuracy rates by avoiding handwritten forms and can save businesses time in the application process, especially if they have multiple businesses submitting renewals, like large animal facilities that have multiple sites. One of the best examples of success is our online water use reporting, which has been underway for several years. We now see about 90% of these reports made via the online system, and water users love the fact that they can get an immediate response and know that the required water use report has been submitted, rather than wait for the mail system to deliver it, which doesn't provide that certainty that they have submitted it on time. We've recently added live plant dealers to the licenses that can be renewed online, and KDA will continue to expand our options to provide that convenience, efficiency, certainty, and accuracy that will better serve our stakeholders. If you haven't yet taken advantage of online renewals, give us a call, and we're happy to help walk you through the process. Just another way the Kansas Department of Agriculture is working to serve, promote, and grow the state's largest industry, agriculture.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
The National Cattlemen's Beef Association, along with KLA, the Texas Cattle Feeders Association, Oklahoma Cattlemen's Association, New Mexico Cattle Growers Association, and Permian Basin Petroleum Association, has filed a notice of intent to sue the Department of the Interior and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service over the listing of the lesser prairie chicken under the Endangered Species Act. This is the first step in court toward overturning the listing and revoking the Fish and Wildlife Service's final rule for both the northern and southern distinct population segments. The ESA listing previously was set to take effect at the end of January, but due to pressure on the Biden administration from NCBA and its allies in Congress, the rule was delayed by 60 days. The listing now will take effect March 27th of 2023. The states included in the species range are Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Colorado. The lawsuit follows a letter submitted by NCBA to the Secretary of the Interior and the Fish and Wildlife Service Director requesting a delay of the effective date and flagging particular concern with the 4D rule for the northern population segment, which includes Kansas. By permitting third parties to act as grazing authorities with the power to review and approve management plans within this segment, the agency has opened the door to activist groups having oversight of cattle grazing. However, under the rule, without these third-party approved grazing management plans, cattle producers operating inside the species range will be subject to a punitive degree of civil and criminal penalties for incidental take of the bird.
Imagine turning soybean oil, used cooking oils, and waste animal fats into fuel so amazing it drives U.S. jobs and our economy forward. Learn more about biodiesel at americasadvancedbiofuel.com.
Good day. Mitch Dewar here with Opinion Risk Management. On January 31st, the National Ag Statistics Service released its January 1st cattle inventory. As expected, total cattle inventory was down 3% at 89.3 million head versus January 1st of 2022 at 92.1 million head. All cows and heifers were down 3% at 38.3 million versus 39.4 million a year ago. All heifers 500 pounds and over came at 19.2 versus 19.9 million a year ago. Steers weighing 500 pounds or more as of January 1st, 23 were reported at 16.1 million, down 3% versus a year ago. The 22 calf crop was reported at 34.5 million head, down 2%. Cattle on feed and feedlots came in at 14.2 million, down 4% on the year. To start the week, both live and feeder cattle futures had solid gains, but took a breather the day after the report. The classic buy the rumor, sell the fact. With the anticipated decrease of numbers, the report will have little to do with the market short term, but will be something that will develop over the next couple years. Beef demand moving forward is still of concern as we continue to see a high cost of living for consumers. Grains continue to be volatile, with wheat challenging resistance to the upside, and corn and soybeans continuing to work both sides of their last couple months' upward channels. This week we started the price discovery for the base price for corn and soybean insurance. To talk about the markets, give us a call here at 888-452-8751. I'm Mitch Dewar with Opinion Risk Management.
That's our show this week. Be social with us at kansasagreport.net or our social media channels. I'm Ken Rogers. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
Kansas Corn reminds you that E15 fuel is the right choice for every kind of driver. For the car enthusiast, E15 has higher octane. For the thrifty driver, E15 is priced lower than regular unleaded. For the nature lover, E15 provides cleaner air. For the shopper who buys local, E15 has more ethanol from our Kansas corn farms. Choose E15 for a higher octane, lower price, cleaner American fuel. Message from the Kansas Corn Commission. Learn more at kscorn.com.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.